Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamu alaikum. I would like to welcome you to the 6th lecture in the series on research methods. Today we will be talking about different important research methodologies in information systems and computer science research. Today's lecture is mainly based upon an article, Research Methodologies in MIS and Update, which was published in Communications of the AIS in November 2004. We have talked about these things briefly in our second lecture. Today we will be talking about these things in more detail. First of all, let's review definition of what a research methodology is. We have discussed that an overall process guiding the research project is called research method, or a primary evidence generation mechanism, or that we are not looking at specific methods or techniques during various phases of the project. For example, we are not talking about statistical methods at this time. So this is what we call research methodology. And this is a list of various important research methods that we employ in various fields whenever we conduct research. This list has already been shared with you in the second lecture. And how do we decide on which of these methodologies to choose from? We have described this criteria that it depends on the research question, research model, degree of maturity of research topic, external or internal validity, prior research by others, investigators' interest and strengths, and publication outlet and audience. So now let's talk about these methodologies in detail. The first methodology was speculation or commentary type research articles. This type of research is driven by thinly supported arguments or opinions with little or no empirical evidence. What do we mean by empirical evidence? We mean that we do not have a lot of data to support these type of arguments or opinions, but people strongly believe in those type of things. Usually experts and leading authorities in the field write these type of research papers. The other research model or research method that we use is development of frameworks and conceptual models. This type of research intends to develop framework or a conceptual model. An organizing framework model of important variables in research domain is proposed, possibly with relationships. Evaluation and verification may await future work. So what happens in this type of research is that we identify different variables and we put them in some order, and we try to build some relationship that what is a dependent variable, what is an independent variable, and how do they interact? What is the impact of intervening variables? What are the impacts of confounding variables? So all these things, all those variables and their relationships in a diagram is the development of research framework. Another important type of research is library research. In library research, we basically review existing literature. We summarize, or we may make some extensions to the existing body of knowledge. When we want to go beyond just summarizing existing literature, we call it literature analysis. And literature analysis includes criticizing, analyzing, and extending existing literature and attempt to build new groundwork. Some of the examples include meta-analysis. Now, what is meta-analysis? The word meta comes from computer science, in which we say meta is data about data. For example, we have a journal or we have an article. That article has some content in it, but there is some other information that comes before the journal, before that article. For example, name of the author, the journal, number of pages, page numbers, year of publication, volume number, issue number. So all that type of data is called metadata. So when we apply the same concept in research, what we do is we gather number of articles on a certain topic, and we try to derive unifying themes from those articles. For example, what type of methodology has been used in most of the research. For example, if we are reviewing 300 articles on a certain topic, that review will give us a very good overview of what type of methodology to use if we want to conduct research in that particular field. We will also know about what questions have already been asked and what questions have already been answered. What questions are open questions, what questions are trivial question in that particular field. So literature analysis becomes an important research method. Now this could include qualitative and quantitative data analysis. We will be talking about quantitative and qualitative data analysis in greater detail later in this lecture, but for the time being, in meta-analysis, we do have both quantitative and qualitative data to analyze. And this sometimes even defines future direction of a certain field. So typically, each previous study is treated as a data point in literature analysis. Case study. Case study is a study of single phenomena. For example, an application, a technology, a decision in an organization or logical time frame. And one of the examples that I can quote here is experience of a company in implementing an ERP system. ERP systems are called enterprise resource planning systems. Enterprise resource planning systems have different types of consequences. Different organizations have different types of experiences with it. Some organizations implement this type of system very easily, others do not. Some organizations spend millions of dollars and still do not get the value out of that information system that they are trying to implement. So why did that happen? Why was it successful in the companies where it was successful? And why did it fail in the companies where it did fail? So that type of research, analyzing the causes and doing an in-depth analysis, constitutes case study. And usually, unit of analysis is one organization, one company, one person. And another example of case study could be in Allama Iqbal Open University, we have PhDs in Iqbaliyat, one person. So studying about Iqbal, his literature that he wrote, all those things, they become case study. Mostly this is part of qualitative data analysis or qualitative research method. Survey is another important research method. It's quantitative in nature, and this research uses predefined and structured questionnaire to capture data from individuals. In surveys, usually we provide some space for people who are responding to the questionnaire for some open form entry. However, mainly survey is meant to get data on particular questions in either yes, no type of answers or rating on a scale or select the best option. So multiple choice questions type questionnaire is mailed out usually. Now today with the use of technology, we might email this type of survey, or we may fax the surveys and get responses, but usually response rate is pretty low. Sometimes if a researcher gets 10% response rate, it is considered extremely good. So surveys are an important research method. The next important research method is called field study. In field study, what we do is we go and study single or multiple and related processes or phenomena in a single or multiple organizations. An important thing to note is that investigator or the researcher spends time in the actual organization and obtains data in the actual setting. Sometimes this type of research is also called ethnography. And in ethnography, researcher actually goes in a certain ethnic environment and tries to do things and tries to think about things the way actual people do. So as a result, the findings of the research are from the real people's perspective or that organization's perspective. So they try to understand how people behave in a certain culture, in a certain organization, in a certain environment. How do they act? How do they react? So for example, if a researcher goes and spends time in, for example, Afghanistan or in some Latin American culture and tries to find out how people live their lives in that type of environment, that type of study will be called ethnography. Next research method is called field experiment. Research in organizational settings that manipulate and control various experimental variables and subjects. This type of research is usually expensive because it involves involvement of real people, real organizations, and this type of study will have serious consequences in the output of that organization. For example, a company wants to implement certain software, or as I gave an example, they want to implement an ERP system. But in the previous attempts, people were not willing to adopt that system. So now they want to do another attempt to implement that system. So they might do an experiment in a small portion of their organization instead of launching it in a full-fledged organizational environment. So that type of research will be called field experiment. Next important research method is called laboratory experiment. In lab experiments, usually research is done in a simulated lab environment that manipulates and controls various experimental variables and subjects. Typically, it is conducted in a classroom environment with students. Next research method is called design science. This involves development of artifacts, creation and evaluation of IT artifacts. What are IT artifacts? The programs we write, the coding, the executable files, software engineering documents, requirement analysis, design, architecture. All those documents, all those valuables or deliverables are called artifacts. If your research involves the development of those type of documents or writing code or doing programming, that type of research will most probably be classified as design science, because you are designing new architectures, new systems, new softwares. In design science, problem-solving paradigm is followed. And in this problem-solving paradigm, it creates and evaluates ideas, practices, and technical capabilities and products. Qualitative research. In qualitative research, what we do is that we try to understand people and social and cultural contexts within which they live. This method may include ethnography, action research, case research, interpretive studies, examination of documents and texts, and we will have our next lecture on this topic where we will have a demonstration of a qualitative research method. Next research method is called secondary data research method. In this type of research method, we utilize existing data from organizational resources. For example, financial and accounting reports, archival data, and published statistics. Next research method is called content analysis. In this type of research method, we analyze text, and we examine that text in a systematic way by identifying and grouping different themes and code them, we classify them, and we develop categories. Relevant example would be from religion, tafsir. What researchers do is they try to understand the meaning of Quran in the context of hadith and interpretations done by other researchers. So that type of biblical analysis is called content analysis. Now, this doesn't have to be Quran all the time. This could be an email. This could be a letter. This could be analysis of any textual correspondence between two organizations, between two people. So this is again an example of qualitative research method. Next research method is called combination research method, and as the name suggests, it is a combination of different research methods. There is a concept of triangulation. Triangulation means that one research method gives you certain results. You employ another research method, and if you get the same results, your findings are more reliable. If you use another research method, it will become even more reliable. So triangulation of methods is very important. Well, triangulation of method is not the only thing that makes your research reliable. Triangulation of data sources could also make your research more reliable. For example, you collect data from experts, you collect data from existing documents, from published reports, and you collect data from surveys, you conduct simulations. So you are employing different types of research methods to generate different types of data. It includes quantitative data, it includes qualitative data, and you combine them. And as a result, your findings are considered more reliable. In combination, we also cross-validate the results, and it provides more confidence in the findings. Next research method is called survey research. In survey research, we have again two types of surveys. One is exploratory or descriptive survey or explanatory survey. In exploratory survey, researcher tries to become familiar with the topic and finding the value of various variables. For example, opinion research, what people think about certain phenomena. In explanatory research, we try to find causal relationship between variables. For example, in technology adoption, the basic model is technology attributes. Those attributes affect attitude. Attitude affects intention, and intention affects use. We have already spent some time on experiments when we were talking about quantitative research method. We'll talk about experiments in a little bit more detail here. Experiments, an experiment is a test under controlled conditions that is made to demonstrate the validity of a proposed theory or knowledge principles, or examine the validity of a certain hypothesis. In other words, why do we need to conduct experiments? We look at the scientific research process. We make some observation and we get curious. We ask questions. We study literature. After studying that literature, we develop tentative answers to that question. Now, whether those tentative answers to those research questions are valid or not, we need to conduct some study. We need to do some experiment. Now, there are some basic principles to experimental designs. The foremost principle is that a planned interface in the natural order of events by the researcher should be selected. The goal is to observe the effect of single or multiple independent variables on a dependent variable. Each combination of independent variable is called a treatment. We have already talked about it in our last lecture. A selected condition or a change is introduced. There may be several treatments. Subjects are assigned to different treatments. Treatments are administered and their impact on subjects is observed. Next is simulation. Simulation is a design science methodology, and it is a term applied to the process of modeling the essential features of a situation and then predicting what is likely to happen by operating with the model on a case-by-case basis. We are developing an algorithm for efficient communication. We do not have access to real networks. And even if we have access to real networks, we do not want to overload that network because that network will be handling real-time data. That could be very important data, and if we overload the system, things might get delayed. So we do not want to mess around with the real life system. So what do? We do simulation in that type of situation. Today, we have discussed different research methods, and we know that there are many methodologies that exist beyond the ones that I have described today. And no research method is better from one another. All research methods have their own benefits, their own power, and they have their own disadvantages. So which method do we choose? We go back to the criteria that I had explained at the beginning of this lecture. According to that criteria, we select which methodology is the most appropriate in a given situation for your particular research question. But you should be very careful in the choice of a methodology because it takes a lot of time, energy, and effort to do a research project. And you do not want to get into a situation where after doing that research project, you find out that you had chosen inappropriate research method for that type of research. However, you should be very careful about the choice of a particular research method for your research project. A research project involves a lot of time commitment, a lot of energy, and you do not want to find out at the end of the study that the research method that you have used for that type of research was inappropriate. So you should spend some time in selecting an appropriate research method for your research project. Thank you very much. We'll see you in the next lecture. Allah Hafiz.